Egyptian delegation to Ethiopia headed by the water ministry returned from Ethiopia Tuesday after it failed to resolve sticking points following talks on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation, Mohammed Abdul Muttalib, resumed talks in the Ethiopian capital on Monday. The Egyptian Water Ministry said that Abdul Muttalib accepted an invitation to hold talks from his Ethiopian counterpart, Elemayo Tiuno. Egypt's water ministry said after the meeting that all suggestions by the Egyptian delegation to solve sticky points were met with unjustified rejection, reaching the level of obstinacy. To be speaking more about this issue, which is a major issue in Egypt today, we're joined with the social and comparative religion, Mr. Ismail Hamid. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us.
Morning.
So let me start with the conflicts over the water frequency and the history of Egypt. And Egypt had a treaty signed 100 years back within the British reign and under the supervision of the British reign, and it secured Egypt's rights over the Nile's water. Now with the situation and the conflicts, if you can give us a brief about the history of this conflict over water for Egypt.
Yes, surely that we should talk about the value of the Nile for Egyptian. The Nile, it is the essence of the life for the Egyptian. It is the main source of water. And as you know that, we depend on the Nile for our life, for irrigation, for drinking, for everything. Egypt is a dry country. And so for that, so the Nile is a very important source of the life for the Egyptian. And as we know that the Nile is the longest river of the world, 6,700 kilometers. And the dilemma or the dilemma of this is 85% of the water of the Nile came from Ethiopia. So for us, Ethiopia is a very strategic country for Egypt and for the national security of our country. But the problem that we have very lots of complications related to this point, especially the close relation between Ethiopia and Israel. We have an old heritage that gathered between the two countries, and especially that even in the Ethiopian constitution itself that confirmed that relation, and that says that the Ethiopian kings, that they are coming from, or they are descendants of the family of the King Menelik the First, who was the son of the King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And the story of the Queen of Sheba and the King Solomon, they are mentioned in the holy books, in Quran, in the Bible, so they are well known to the old people. So for the Ethiopian, their identity, it is related to Israel. It is related to the Jewish people, and they consider themselves as the sons of Israel. So I presented recently a research which is very important, that is talking about that topic.
Al-Ahram, yes.
Yeah, Al-Ahram made a very important report about that, and it's talking about this point that we should insist about that. We talk about Ethiopia, which is an African Israel for us. So we should understand Ethiopians and their attitude and their heritage, just to understand these people. And what we see now of the negotiations, you know, with the Minister of the Water Resources, Dr. Mohammed Abdul Muttalib, that it wasn't vain. It's something that, you know, that as you negotiate with Israel, this is the same point. They build now the dam of Renaissance. On the same time, we negotiate, and after that, the negotiation, they failed. This is the same way like what the Israelis, they do. With the Palestinians, with the peace talks and with the negotiations, yes, they build the colonies and settlements and everything. Yes, we can do something like that in front of the media, and that we are very flexible for talking and negotiation and to give some commitments. But, you know, there is, after that, nothing to do. It is the same way between the Ethiopians with the Israelis on the same time.
Yes, that's a very good point. And the topic or the title of the report that you have done in Al-Ahram mentioned that Ethiopia used the water as an important weapon against Egypt and ancient Egypt long time back. So if you can shed some light on this history, because maybe we don't really know about this history.
Yes. We have a Solomonian dynasty. This is a dynasty which is the most important dynasty in the history of Ethiopia. They are related to Solomon, the king of Israel, and they said that we are the descendants of this king and that. So they became on the power on Ethiopia. during the 7th century of Islamic calendar, about 13th century of after Jesus. So these kings, they threatened every time the Egyptian kings and the Egyptian people to stop the water coming to Egypt. This is the using their relation, with the closer relation between them with the Israel, because they are Israelites on the same time, and also as we know that Egypt in the Jewish mentality is considered to be the land of slavage, where their grandfathers were slaves in Egypt. So there is a part of devastation or hatred between Egypt and the Israelis. On the same time, it was transmitted to the Ethiopians. So when some Israelis kings that they became on the throne of Ethiopia, surely that they will threaten Egypt using or profiting of such a relation or such a heritage of that. And so we have lots of resources and lots of documents that talking about their kings, Yakunu Amlak and Saif Arad and Siyun. All of these kings, they threatened the Egyptian sultans and the Egyptian people to stop the water to come to Egypt, this to dry Egypt and to make the Egyptian people hungry. That is a way that used more than 1,000 years ago by the Ethiopian kings. This as what we can see now. So we can make a very important relation between the past and the present that we have till our time. So that's what we use now. Ethiopia had every year or have every year more than 2,000 billion meter cubes of water. Okay, only is coming to Egypt about 55 billion meters. So it's not a big amount according to what is raining or what is falling on Ethiopia. But most of the water that they were going to the drainage to the unimportant parts of Ethiopia. And so why not to benefit this part of the water that is falling on your plateau or the Ethiopian plateau and let what coming in Egypt? This is the dilemma, or this is the problem for them. This is also by the pushing of Israelis influence in Ethiopia to make some projects that should influence and should affect negatively on the Egyptian interests of the water. Yes, that is something very complicated. And that also Israel now suffers a problem of water, and now it is a time of or a dry time for them. And as the scholars they say, in the future the wars will be because of the water, not because of the oil or the petroleum. So we should take care of this point, and we should also use our main items like a research like that, which is talking about that close relation, when we should tell them, because it's a very strong part of us. Okay?
So my first question to you, Ismail, is about if Ethiopia is related to Israel, and this is the influence of Israel and influence of the heritage and using the same weapon or threat against Egypt. But why is the other Nile basin supporting this decision?
Yeah, because Ethiopia is the most important country of the source of the Nile. We talk about a country which is giving the Blue Nile 85% of the water. So this is the dominant country. On the same time, the other countries that they are a little bit secondary importance and value according to what of Ethiopia, so they should support Ethiopia. On the same time, during the last 30 years, Egypt was brought its back to the African affairs, and surely that it is a very negative point that we made, and Egypt neglected Africa. On the same time, Israel benefited of this point and penetrated the river Nile sources by Ethiopia and from the other countries. So for the countries that they are looking for the Nile, we talk about 10 countries, okay? Egypt and Sudan and the other countries that they are considered to be the sources of the water. So they are more important more than the countries that they are presenting the mouth of the water or the river Nile.